talk to the people around you, maybe just for 5 minutes of the leadership. So we're all gonna be in uncertain spaces, whether it's COVID or whether it's just something new we're trying. There's always room for growth. And sometimes we can find that in those spaces of, we don't have all the answers. So don't use any names, but talk about, what does ineffective leadership look like? When leadership is not at its best, what are those problems? What could that be? So I'm gonna have you talk for about 4 or 5 minutes, then we're gonna share. Online folks, you can brainstorm in the chat box what poor leadership might look like. Can you see the chat box? Can you see the chat box? You just want to maybe list the chat box. Okay, 30 seconds. And Dr. Bell's going to share some of the chat box, and we're going to share as well, because I heard some really great conversations.
So there's a pretty lively conversation going on in the chat. So Jamie says, passing the buck and blaming others.
Yeah.
Jared says, no clear direction or goal. And Angel says, asking big tasks without providing support or resources. That's really a compliment.
Wow, I am blown away. Good job, our online folks. Well, I'm going to ask our in-person people too, but before we look at some of the stats, I'm going to ask some of our in-person folks to share too. And this table is having a really good conversation. Okay, Jason.
What's the focus?
Well, you guys are talking about some reasons why effective leadership wasn't happening.
For us, one of the biggest pieces was it boils down to lack of trust, and often seen micromanaging and undercutting a variety of ways. Destroy the vision, if there is one at all.
Good point. It's hard to be a team when you don't want to work with your teammates. So when I was doing some research on teams, effective teams that really like each other, they are 3 times more productive. So when people say you can't be friends with your colleagues, that's a lie. You want to like and be friends with people you're working with, because you're going to work harder than ever. And the research backed it up. They said 3 times more work was outputted by the teams that love each other. We don't have to love your teammate, but got along well. So anyone else want to share? I heard some good conversations as I was walking around.
Oh, well, the one I mentioned was power versus service. You know, if you're in that particular position and you have this power and how I'm wielding this power and what I can do with this power, as opposed to being what we learn in our civic lessons, in school civics lessons, that are public officials or public servants. So even we're supposed to be leading that as a society, but we may not be seeing that in our leadership and education. So that was one bringing it up, power versus service.
Very good. Yeah, I guess one of the years was talking about, when we're deciding who does what. If someone just delegates, you do this, you do this, needs to be in by this, there is no buy-in, there is no teamwork. And so saying, well, this is your strength. Are you interested in this? Because then we have the empowerment. I think Jason used the word empowerment, and I just like that word. This table was talking very enthusiastically. Does anyone want to share what was on your minds?
The things that I heard was, sometimes leadership can fail because of communication problems in a big organization. And another thing was, some leaders like to say yes to everybody and don't like to make hard decisions.
Very good. Great start to our conversation today. So let's look at some of the stats. I'm a little bit of a numbers nerd, so let's move towards some staggering stats really about leadership. So when new leaders move in, and I got this from Harvard Business Review, so some of it's a little more business oriented than higher ed, but I think it's very interesting. In businesses, about 50 to 70% of new leaders fail within the 18 months. So they don't take the time to learn the vision, perhaps they don't have the communication, And then we know a lot of, leadership is having strong relationships, so we can maybe conjecture some of those things aren't happening, and that's why so many new leaders, have to leave within a short time. And I thought this next one was really interesting as far as being future oriented and strategic. Because I think a lot of people are future oriented, but having a pragmatic, strategic plan is really tough to do. Because you're measuring the growth and you're moving together. It said about 95% of leaders don't have that strategic future, plan. And then we do know burnout probably because your best and your brightest, maybe some of us in this room, they're the most likely to burn out because they're the ones who are taking on extra tasks. They're the ones who are always looking for that extra grant. They're the ones who serve on, every committee at your university or institution. Another thing I thought was interesting is that people feel compromised with ethics. And it's kind of sad that almost half have had a leader that asked them to do something that, hopefully we can stand up and say, no. But that's not always the case. And I will say in higher ed, I did have a supervisor who asked me to do something very unethical, and I said, I will not do that. It's not good for the students, it's not good for anybody, the community. And then my life was miserable after I stood up to that supervisor. So there's pushback sometimes when you stand up. So you will lose good people. And then I thought this is actually a positive thing. It's at least 10 to 15% of people though are really good at relationships and really good at people. So I'm thinking if you're at this event today, you are here to learn, which is part of being a leader. You're a lifelong learner and you enjoy the camaraderie, the fellowship. And so that's how I know if you're listening today, we have the heart of leadership. Any questions about the stats? Well, I'm going to keep moving us along. So if you have not read the article Crucibles of Leadership, I do want to mention it's one of my favorites, Crucibles of Leadership. And it talks about, we're all going to meet adversity. At some point, we will all meet adversity. And then how do we emerge? If we emerge stronger and believing and lifting up others, well, then you are a leader. And they gave the image of a phoenix, that you have hard times, because everyone's going to have hard times sooner or later, but you rise up. And so often the saying is, lead the work, lead the people, lead yourself. But I flipped it because this group was talking about emotional intelligence. And it's really important to know yourself so that when someone asks you a question, you can say, I believe in that, or no, I won't do that. So one tool I think that could be really helpful if you haven't come across it yet is the Clifton Strengths. So over 90% of Fortune 500 companies, top companies use Clifton Strengths. Has anyone done it? Clifton Strengths? I absolutely love it. You've done it, Susan? So we probably know ourselves kind of what we're good at, but it helps you lean into yourself even more because it's your professional life, personal too, but like mine said, one of my top 3 strengths was positivity. And I used to always kind of get embarrassed. I was so peppy. Like, hey, let's do it. Let's lead the charge. But then I realized that's one of my super strengths. I'm like, okay, well, that's just me. And so I think when you see your strengths like really mapped out on a tool like that, it helps you kind of say, oh yeah, I own myself. That's just me. And so it's not so embarrassing because you recognize that really is like who you are. So leaders are born and made. You can use like sort of what you naturally are and then those experience to be a good leader. I also want to recommend, maybe you've heard of VIA Character Strengths. That's a free tool. I used to do it with my grad students and they loved it because it's free. And it also kind of shows like, what are your natural strengths? And someone had said, we want to see what's right with people. Too often we're worried about like, oh, well, I'm not this, I'm not that. Don't worry about that. That's why you have great teammates who can fulfill that role. So when you know your strengths, you can be like, well, we've already got this covered. We need a teammate who does this. And so that's the best part, knowing where to put the right people in the right places. And if you know your strengths and all you can kind of talk about, well, this is what I like to do, this is what I'm good at, you are going to be more engaged. The research shows you'll be 6 times more likely to engage at work because you don't want to be saying, I'm doing this work, it's kind of a menial task, and my strengths are not being utilized. And it was funny because I was listening to a podcast and it was a Navy SEAL and they had asked him to clean up trash on the beach. And the irony was like, here are these warriors of the world and we're asking them to go pick up like beer bottles on the beach. I'm just laughing. I was like, talk about not using people's strengths. But if you're positive, they said when they did that, the community came out, they brought them food, they came out to say thank you. So we try to have a good attitude because sometimes when we're doing something and it doesn't seem like it's our strength, good things can happen. But they're going outside our comfort zone, and that's really important. So the second action though, I want to kind of mention is that relationships matter. You know, if you're in education, you know that. Relationships are how we get things done, you know, because we lean on each other. So one of the questions that I proposed, are you a good teammate? So there's a lot of self-reflecting and self-refining when you're thinking about your own emotional intelligence and how we're interacting with others. It's really tough to say, I'm a good teammate, I'm a good leader, because really others get to decide that. You know, so if you hear someone saying, well, I'm a great teammate, that's not for them to decide. It's for other people to remind you of, oh yeah, you are good. The other thing I wanted to mention too is, do you feel shared responsibility? And we had mentioned that with failed leadership, that there's a lot of fingers pointing. But in excellent leadership, there's that team ownership of like, hey, I'll do this and you can do that, and everyone is involved. There's a good book called Extreme Ownership. I just finished it. It's kind of interesting. It's more military based, my guilty pleasure to military history, but extreme ownership is that when things go wrong, we figure it out and we fix it. Another concept is we're always talking about innovation. Well, how do you set the stage for innovation? A lot of it comes from listening. A lot of it comes from dialogue. And that's pretty powerful because we're creating safe spaces for communication. I think some of our really good ideas come from a lot of us just making the time to get together and brainstorm. And you're thinking, we don't have time. We're busy. I know you are. But I find it really fascinating that successful companies like Google, I believe they're given 1 day a week to just brainstorm and work on creative projects. So if you at some point, maybe in your day or once a week, can just say, hey, I'm gonna get creative, I'm gonna write something down or meet up with a friend for coffee so that I can, you know, brainstorm, that will help you create the space for innovation. I usually call it setting the stage because, you know, it's just the ideas coming to you. Okay, the third action I wanted to highlight was engaging others and shared meaning. And I think this part's really interesting. So in most businesses, 20% of people do 80% of the work. You've probably heard of the 20-80 rule because it's very common. And we're kind of nodding our heads like, yes, we know. But that is fascinating because 20% of your people are doing 80% of your work. But that also means that there's about 15% at least who are totally disengaged from the work. So we have to find ways to bring them in. You know, like, how can you be involved? How can you, I don't know, find ways to be inclusive? And the reminder that, you know, good leadership is very simple. You know, it's clear that we want to be inclusive, we want to involve them, but the things we need to do are not easy. And when I was asking someone on the flip side of, we know what kind of poor leadership could look like, you know, miscommunication, not hitting our goals, then you can say, well, what does good leadership look like? And so on the flip side, we know there's clear communication, there is shared responsibility, there is shared vision. And then I might also mention before I go on to the next slide. So the shared responsibility includes knowing what you bring to the table. And I think that's really valuable because you're going to have to advocate for yourself at some point. Is that easy to do? Not usually. It's easy to advocate for others. Like, oh, my friend does this well and that kind of thing. But it's also really important to know your own strengths and to say, hey, I can do this work. I can do it well. So how do we create shared meaning? Well, there's some things we can do. We can make sure we're putting the right people in the right places, and they'll be happier. Also, we talk about that buy-in or empowerment. I see a lot of delegating, and delegating is not an efficient way to get people involved. You know, he said, I need this on my desk by 5. I can't tell you how many friends and colleagues have called me and said, I think I'm quitting. I'm looking for another job. My boss just said they need us at 5 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock on Friday. They're expecting me to work on it all afternoon. If I don't finish it, I'll be working all weekend. So the realistic expectations of input and buy-in from our team is very valuable. And I also want to mention, how many of you are Thunder fans? Go Thunder, I'm so excited. But when we're talking about buy-in and putting people in the right places, think of a team like the Thunder. Now, I'm technically a soccer player, but I love basketball, but you wouldn't really have Chet, who's over 7 feet, playing point guard typically. He dribbles well, but he's in the right place when he's by the bucket and he can, you know, do his thing over there. And then think about someone like SGA, who's an incredible leader. He's typically playing point guard because he facilitates others well. He gets them involved, or he can get his own shot off. So think of education as that kind of thing. Like, where are you putting people in that they can shine? Also, I want to mention rituals of connection. Unfortunately, this is usually the first thing to go. When we are busy, we don't have time to do things. But if you go out for birthdays, or if you have a cup of coffee with a certain friend, whatever you do, those rituals might be campus holidays. I always love holidays on campuses. Make sure you lean into that. Make sure you invite people. Let people know that they are welcomed and affirm their value. I think I saw during Harvard Business Review, because that's one of my favorites lately, it said 80% of employees would leave a position where they are not recognized and valued. So even though internally they're doing great work, but if your colleagues and supervisors are just constantly taking you for granted, 80% of people are going to leave. And sometimes those people get poached. I know there's, at Google, there's a lot of poaching that happens. So I'm going to mention 2 more actions. So set the stage for adaptive capacity. And this was considered actually the most important skill for leadership in one of the articles I read. So for me, it wasn't the top one, but this person was arguing this has to be one of the top things for a good leader, that you know your team can handle and bring adaptive capacity. And I think you can feel it when someone doesn't want to change. Like, we always did it this way. We just always do it this way. And I understand, because a lot of places I've been at, they wanted to hold on to their paper files. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see paper. So, you know, changing is hard, but I think it's really important. And this quote is from Daring Greatly with Brene Brown. I liked it too, because she talks about appropriate vulnerability. And that's what adaptive capacity takes. Because we have to have everyone on board, and it's risky. It's good to take calculated risk. We're not going to be reckless, but I'm saying it is very good to take risk. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So my last action. Oh, I had one more thing. How do you make stuff happen? Well, get out there and go try it. Experience, shape us, and inspire us. I think that's really important, because a lot of times, especially lately, I'm at my computer a lot. And so we have to make the time to have those new experiences and meet new people. Okay, last but not least. Okay. I put courage and heart together as my last action. And here are some leaders that I've looked up to. So when I was young, I read the autobiography of Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf. But when she talked about wanting to learn, wanting to share her message, wanting to inspire others, it's very beautiful, because you know she had hardships. The other leader I've always enjoyed was Nelson Mandela, who talked about a space of uncertainty. He was in prison, you know, no longer, not yet. What do you do when you feel like you're just waiting? And we've all been in that situation. You know, maybe you're waiting on a new job, maybe you're feeling like you're waiting for the semester to end, perhaps, when you're waiting. But the important part is, when you're sort of in that limbo state, that's the time to really like dance in the rain. That's the time to be like, hey, what can I do to get out of this day-to-day that I'm doing and do something different? And Steve Jobs always talked about that. He said, if I did the same thing 2 days in a row, I started changing it up. And he also talked about connecting the dots backwards. Because sometimes we're not sure where to go. You know, it's like, well, where do I go from here? But he talked about connecting dots backwards to give him creativity and that futuristic strategy. Remember, we talked about being strategic with the future. The other person I want to mention is Admiral McCraven, who did the Osama bin Laden raid. Just a brilliant leader. He led all our military and worked with President Obama. I want to mention him because if you haven't seen his commencement speech, the Make the Bed one, he is really inspiring. Who's seen that one, the Make the Bed speech at UT? And he talked about 10 little things that can change the world. And they just start with you. I was going to bring his book because he has the book too, and it's really good. So in his book, the Make the Bed book that came from the commencement speech that went viral, if you haven't seen it, that's your homework. Not to be too professorial, but go check it out. You will be inspired. Talks about he wanted to be a Navy SEAL, so he just graduated from UT. He's going over to Coronado, California. He sees this skinny guy. He's like, ooh, who's this misguided recruit? And he's looking at this guy's really skinny and brown. When he gets into the head, what's it called, Commodore of all the Navy SEALs on the West Coast, the Commodore turns to him and goes, I hope you saluted that person in the hallway. And Admiral McCraven, it's not Admiral McCraven yet, he's figuring out his journey. He kind of looked at him confused and he said, that is the most decorated Navy SEAL in the history. And that was a pretty cool story because his name is right here, Tommy Norris. He almost didn't make it through the training because I kept saying he's so small, he's just short and small in stature. He became the most decorated Navy SEAL during the Vietnam War because he was the only one brave enough to go past the enemy lines and rescue, I believe 2 Air Force men had gotten back there and everyone else said, we're not going there. He was the only one of special operations who dared to go back there. And that's why I said courage begets courage. So, because he was such an amazing leader and they knew he actually did that for his teammates, he got shot in the face. And his good friend, Michael Thornton, said, I cannot leave him behind because he would have never left any of us behind. I thought it was really powerful. His leadership inspired so many other people. And so when a lot of them got scared and, you know, left him, he said, he would never do that to us. We're going back. So they went back, got shot, had to swim in the ocean for about 3 hours after being shot. And these are true heroes. So they both received a Medal of Honor. But that's why I talk about courage begets courage. And if you even look at the word courage, the root is Latin for heart. That's why I always think of, when I don't want to do something, I dig deep and think about things beyond myself. So that gives us just a little bit of time for more questions and discussion. So maybe just with the person beside you in pairs this time, so a little smaller, in groups of 2 or 3, answer 2 of those questions. What's your best leadership skill, or how do you motivate people? Leading up and down the chain of command is really important because we're developing people on all levels. That's really important. And then what would you be curious? If you have time, you can probably even do your bonus question, but I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to answer that question with a person beside you. Try to answer at least 2 questions. We had some great conversations. Sounds like the chat box was having some good ones. Dr. Bell, you want to share?
So you do have one response, and that is building connection. Amy says, respecting others' abilities. This is not only from my approach when starting, I was not great at delegating and supporting other abilities to do the job, but that is a strength now, and it really empowers others.
And your strength should be something that fulfills you. We had a great conversation about authenticity, because maybe you do something well, but it's not fulfilling. You want to do things that you're passionate about. You go above and beyond because we probably do that anyway, but you really enjoy it. So in this group, remind me of a popular saying too, of the shepherd should smell like the sheep. You know, that we wouldn't ask people to do things that we wouldn't be willing to do. I think that's really powerful because when that happens, it's like, ooh. So did anyone else want to share?
We talk about basic leadership skills.
What did you come up with?
So I took that strength finder test, and one of my strengths is individualization. And when I teach, I see in a classroom, the students are different, so different skills, so how to help them to grow with their set of skills. Same with, I think, with the leader in the team, different people have different skills, how to help them with like skills and then progress as a team.
And that's a great thing to know skill sets, because you tend to like people like you know, when people are similar, it's like, "Oh, let's do that, we both like that, we love the thunder, right? But when you're hiring a teammate, you really need someone who's just different, because when we're around people who are different, we see things in new ways, and we come together across differences. So look for someone that maybe thinks differently, looks differently, acts differently, and you know, have a great conversation. You will walk away a better person, and hopefully have a new friend. Anyone else want to share?
I can speak to that for a second. I was just using an example, but, you know, I'm pretty loud. I'm a psychology professor, and I found a person over to wellness. And I'm like this idea person. I love to dance and sing and throw out things. And she's this great grounded person who'll say, oh, well, okay. And she's very encouraging still, but she's like, you know, have you filled out this form? Have you done this thing? Have you got this approval? And usually people like that shut me down, but she has this magic of that. So I think it's good to find people who are opposites of you, because she would not want to get up and dance and sing. I don't sing, by the way, really, but I'm just saying. And I don't want to fill out the forms, you know, so to find those partnerships are huge.
I'm glad you mentioned that dichotomy of leadership, because you want to be bold, but you don't want to be brash. And you need to be getting things done, but you don't want to be overwhelmed and overworked. So there's all that dichotomy of leadership happening. Very good. One more thing too, we're talking about getting out there and doing things, you know, as I saw this on, actually the parenting test, I think is what it was. This person had a PhD in parenting. I thought, well, that could be useful. But his point was, when you lack experience, you are very confident. And so that's why our teams need to be made of different people. Some people who don't have experience yet because they're very confident, they're like, we can do this. And then some of us who maybe are a little older, when they're talking about, I was one of the first people to do a smart board in P12. That's how old I am, because no one wanted to do something new. I was young and just like, sure, let's try it out. But once you have veterans, they can guide you and say, well, we've tried that in the past. Let me tell you what were some obstacles. And so you have that vision better because you had the experience. I thought it was fascinating. I said young people have a lot of confidence because they lack experience, which is fun. So any questions and conversations? What great dialogue we had today.
What is your thought on that, Bert? The last question over there in the previous slide?
Oh, the bonus question about, I think it was burnout, wasn't it? Yeah, your best people are gonna have burnout. How do you protect them? I think it really comes with knowing your people. Good leaders know you, and they'll say, this is a project that you'd be fantastic on. Let's do that. But in the military, we call it prioritizing and executing. So I didn't serve, I just think that it's very interesting that when you have the stress of war, they have to prioritize and execute well, because one person not doing their job, everything could result in many deaths. So that's why I think protecting your people and telling them, hey, this is your workload. If you really want to do this, things will slow down in a couple months, and then you can pick up that project. Because it's hard to bring people in. I'm always excited to try new things. And that is one of my favorite things about trying things, because there's no testimony without a test. So I like those obstacles. You gotta lean into uncertainty and try new things, because maybe it didn't work out the first time, but that's not, you know, like, it's not failure. It just didn't work out. Sometimes that's good feedback. So I think it's 2:20. I'm probably going over, but let me go down to my contact information, and please feel free to connect. Thank you.